The first core practical that you do on the GCSE chemistry course is called Investigating Inks, and it comes in two parts. The first part is distillation, so you're going to do distillation of a coloured ink, and the second part is chromatography. This is a walkthrough of part A, which is the distillation of a coloured ink, and it uses simple distillation, which is distillation without a condenser. You've got a picture there of the apparatus that you're going to use and a picture of the actual experiment that you did. You need to know the names of some of the equipment that you use. So we'll start off down here. You've got a Bunsen burner and your flask that contains your coloured ink is on a tripod and a gauze over the Bunsen burner that is heating your ink. Inside the flask you've got a thermometer which reads the temperature. That temperature will be the boiling point of the liquid, of the solvent that is in the ink. And also coming out of the bung in the top of the flask you've got a delivery tube, and the tube goes down all the way down into a test tube that contains ice water. Now what you're going to do is you're going to heat your coloured ink until it boils. The solvent that the ink contains, which in this case is water, will turn from a liquid into a gas. The gas will move over the apparatus. It will go up the flask, and the steam will travel over, and the steam will go down. It will hit the cold water and it will condense and turn back into water. So here I've got a couple of video clips which is showing the process. The first one here shows your ink boiling on top of the gauze, and you can see the evaporation of the solvent from it. The second one shows my boiling ink and the steam coming over and condensing in the test tube at the end, and that is my clear water that is being produced from my coloured ink. So the process that we used in the core practical was simple distillation, and here we have the apparatus for simple distillation. Simple distillation involves heating to boiling and then the steam going over and condensing in the cold water. The key thing here is that it doesn't contain a condenser, so it isn't particularly efficient, and you do get fumes of steam coming out when not all the steam is condensed. The second type of distillation that you need to know about is distillation using a condenser. And with distillation using a condenser, the setup is exactly the same. The only difference is that you've got a condenser. Now, a condenser it's a cold water jacket that goes around the outside of the tube that the steam is travelling down. Now, because it's got cold water running along the outside of it, then it's much more efficient at cooling the steam, and therefore it's safer, and you get more of your distillate, of your condensed water out of the product, and you get less wasted steam. The third type of distillation that you need to know about is fractional distillation, and fractional distillation is used if you want to separate a mixture of two liquids which have a similar boiling point. Both simple distillation and distillation using a condenser can be used to get the solvent from a solute in a solution, but fractional distillation is used to separate two liquids of similar boiling point. Now, there aren't many questions that they can ask you about distillation because it's a pretty simple process, but they could ask you about the particle model, because what you're doing is you're going from a liquid here to steam, which is a gas here, and then you're turning your solvent back into a liquid here as it condenses. So you've got a process of evaporation followed by condensation, and it's condensation in a different place, so that your solvent evaporates or boils and then condenses back into a liquid again. Now, we can show that process on this diagram. This diagram shows the liquid that you start off with, your liquid ink. Now, it may contain ink particles as well, dye particles, but they stay behind in the flask. They don't evaporate. What happens is that you heat your liquid and it boils, it turns into a gas. So this is just a recap of the particle models, the particle model for a liquid, the particle model of a gas. That gas goes up, the thermometer records the temperature of the gas, it goes down as it goes through the condenser. This is distillation with a condenser. It cools. In the condenser, the water goes in at the bottom and it comes out at the top, and the condenser cools the steam and turns it back into a liquid again. When you did the distillation practical, this was the first time that you were asked to do air risk assessment, so they could ask you about this. Obviously, if you're using a Bunsen burner, then you have to be careful that you don't burn yourself, and so the precautions that you take is tie your hair back and always leave the Bunsen burner on a safety flame when you're not using it. Using a distillation has risks associated with it, and the flask could bump, and so you use anti-bumping granules, and that just makes the distillation far safer. And you could also say that there could be fumes escaping, and so using a condenser is a safety precaution because it means more of those fumes turn back into liquid. So just to finish off, we've got an example of exam question. Here we've got a picture of simple distillation, and it says a student set up the apparatus shown in figure 2 to obtain pure water from seawater by distillation. Explain how the water in seawater separates to produce the pure water in this apparatus. Well, here you need to say that the seawater boils and then it condenses, and literally those 2 marks were for saying the sea water boils. Now you could say there evaporates, it travels, the seawater boils and travels through the equipment and then condenses. Now the marks there was for saying that the water boils and then condenses in a different place, and as long as you said those 2 things, then you got the 2 marks for that part. The second part of the question says explain how the apparatus could be improved to increase the amount of pure water collected from the same volume as seawater. Now you need to recognise that that was simple distillation, and that if you used a condenser it would improve the efficiency because it improves the condensation of the gas back to a liquid. So explain how the apparatus could be improved. Use a condenser for 1 mark to improve the condensation of the gas back into a liquid. And if you said that, that would get you the second 2 marks.